Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and oh boy, Yoshi's done it again. We have another update that changes a whole bunch of things about the game, wrapped up into what's called a minor patch. He really doesn't know what a minor patch is. Already you can see one of the changes here. My camera is a little bit different, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But real quick, I will have a link to the patch notes in the description down below if you want to follow along. We're going to be going through the highlights here, so yeah, stay tuned. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening. First of all, yeah, they have changed the cameras you can see here. We basically have like a wider FOV, and the character is a little bit smaller on the screen now, but otherwise aiming and stuff is still exactly the same. So we're going to go into a bot match here to showcase the changes that they've done up next. They are pretty big. And real quick, while we're actually getting onto the lane, if you guys enjoy my update coverage and you want to see more, of course, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. I try to publish these videos as soon as the update comes out, just so you can have the information on time. So I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe. But let's talk about the troopers. They have done some pretty crazy things to the troopers in this update regarding how the souls and the medic minion work. So, first of all, the minions now. They work a little bit differently when you actually kill them and drop the soul. So I'm going to kill these minions here, and you can see that the souls still come out just like that. But there's a little soul on the ground there, right there, and if I come near it, I pick it up just like that. So it's a new mechanic where you actually have to be a lot closer to the minions to actually secure the soul. So there's still two parts. There's the flying orb that you have to shoot. That value has gone down to 40% of the value instead of 50% of the value. And then the second part of the soul is dropped on the ground. You have to be within 18 meters to actually capture that soul. And then when you do capture the soul sharing mechanics with your team are exactly the same. So me and Seven will still have the same souls when I capture that soul, and I bring it in for both of us just like that. And also, you see there, okay, I just killed a medic minion. The medic minions are now kind of little sneaky saboteurs. They're working for the enemy team. Because now, the medic trooper doesn't heal the people on the team that owns the medic trooper. Instead, when you kill the enemy's medic trooper, it will drop a healing orb on the ground. So let me kill this guy real quick. And I get this healing orb, and it heals me for 101 health just like that. And the little orb that it drops works exactly the same way as these new soul orbs that drop out from the troopers. So it's a pretty interesting mechanic. And yeah, I was able to get the soul there too. So you have to be a lot closer. The radius at which the minions will actually drop souls in the first place has been improved from 35 meters to 45 meters. So if you're in the vicinity now, you can be 10 meters farther away and they will still drop souls. But to claim the soul, you actually have to get close. And when the enemies drop a soul, like look at this right there, you can see the little soul orb on the ground, but you can't actually collect it or do anything about it, which honestly is a little weird visually, but yeah, hey, look, there's another heal thing. I can grab that. I can get myself healed. It's almost like a mini healing nova. It actually heals for a lot. But of course, it has to heal for a lot because the healing isn't going to be as consistent as the previous medic trooper. And yeah, my medic trooper right here, he's not healing me! Heal me, bozo, please! So this is sure to shake up the meta in a number of different ways. You actually have to be closer. Also, look at that. The 7 claimed a medic med kit there, and I still got healed by that, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, this is really going to shake up the meta because, well, you're going to have to be a lot closer to claim your souls. It's going to kind of encourage you to be a little bit closer to the action in order to actually pick up those souls. Like that soul over there, oh gosh, I'm not going to get that at all until I actually have to come over there and grab that, but then I take some damage from the Guardian. And the souls will last for 18 seconds on the ground before they vanish, so you do need to pick them up in a reasonably timely manner, which is very interesting indeed. And I will say also, playing with this new camera, I mean, I've gotten a little bit more used to it. It does actually feel pretty good. I feel like I can just see a little bit more around me, which is nice. So, yeah, that's a visual win. But yeah, these soul changes are very, very spicy indeed, and, well, we're going to need to see your feedback. The Deadlock devs are going to be eager to actually see what people think about these changes. I'm sure of it. It's another one of those changes where you realize that, yeah, we're definitely in a beta stage for this game, and they are making some wacky changes to change up things that we didn't even know needed changing. But to cover a quick few more details before we move on, the starting soul count for the match has been increased to 600 souls from 400 souls, and they've also actually improved the bounty that troopers give by 10% just throughout the game, and they improved the split ratios. So you now actually get rewarded a little bit less for duoing on a lane. That has gone down from 0.65 soul sharing to 0.54 soul sharing. So still efficient, you're still getting more than 100% of the value of the soul, but it's just not as good as it used to be. However, every other soul split has been improved. So 3 players has gone from 0.28 up to 0.36, 4 players has gone from 0.15 to 0.25, 5 players has gone from 0.12 to 0.2, and the entire team has been doubled from 0.8 to 0.16. So you actually get a lot more souls for grouping up and participating in team fights now, which is pretty crazy. That's also really going to impact the meta. If you're not punished as much for team fighting, then you're probably going to team fight more, and it's going to be very lucrative to do those team fights now. Alright, I'm going to be a really bad teammate and kind of just wander around the map now as we talk about these next couple of changes, because we need to talk about neutral camps. So they have been changed too. Neutral bounty has been increased by 10%, but the neutral HP has been increased by 15%. So, it's harder to take the camps, but more rewarding, and they've also changed a couple of other things too. Small neutral camps, which are the tier 1 camps that I just cleared in this room, those do 15% more damage, but their respawn time has been drastically improved from 180 seconds to 120 seconds. Every 2 minutes now, the camps will respawn. So, if you take the camp efficiently at minute 2, it's not going to respawn at 5 minutes, it's going to respawn at 4 minutes. That's very spicy. Medium neutrals, however, have also received some changes. Medium neutrals, which are the neutrals over here. These neutrals have more spirit resist now, from 30 up to 40, and their damage has been increased by 25%. And wow, you can really notice that. Oh, I'm taking a lot of damage. Okay, bye, I'm leaving. That is a lot of damage. And the hard neutrals, the tier 3 camps, which have not spawned yet, but you guys know where they are, the big tier 3s, right, that come like over here. They have also been buffed. Their spirit resist has gone up from 35 to 50. Their damage has been increased by a whopping 30%. Especially taking those big tier 3s, where there are 3 tier 3 minions. That's actually probably going to be a pretty big challenge now. Unless you're playing a gun build, I guess. Gun builds will still do the same damage as they did before. But, yeah, the general goal is to make the jungle feel more rewarding to farm. You get more value out of it, but it's a lot harder, and hopefully a little bit more interactive. And, yeah, it should be interesting to see how that shakes out. Sinner's Sacrifices have also been nerfed. They've increased the damage from 60 to 80, which means I think I'm probably going to kill myself on this. Oh, yeah, I'm going to kill myself on the Sinner's Sacrifice now. Oh, my gosh. That is really punishing for the early game, especially if you don't have the sustain for that. You're going to need to get a healing right for your Sinner's Sacrifice now, and it's going to use the entire Sinner's Sacrifice. Or entire healing right, excuse me. That's pretty insane. And one more thing that actually really hurts for farming the jungle is that the sprint and out-of-combat regen timer against neutrals has been increased 5-fold, from half a second to 2.5 seconds. So if I go ahead and shoot this minion and then try to walk away, 2.5 seconds later, that's when I'm finally going to start sprinting again, which takes significantly longer than it used to. So it's going to hurt your rotate speed, and especially when you combine that with the fact that they do more damage, it's going to hurt your out-of-combat healing. Because let's say you've got, like, Enchanter's Emblems, Sprint Boots, you've got a bunch of things that give you out-of-combat regen, monster rounds. That's not going to be helping you while you're farming the camp, and then 2.5 seconds after you take the camp, that's when it's going to finally kick in. And so it's just going to be a lot slower, a lot more punishing to take these camps in terms of your health, but much more rewarding in terms of the soul value, so very interesting. Alright, so now let's talk about stuff that pertains to the heroes. So they've done a bit of general changes to try and push gun builds a little bit higher into the meta. First of all, they reduced all the ability point damage upgrades by 10%, so just kind of a flat 10% damage nerf to things across the board, whether it's the tier 2 card trick, the tier 2 full auto, etc., stuff like that. They have also increased base gun damage and gun damage growth by 10%, so the more boons you get, the more gun damage you get. That's all been increased by 10%, excluding Paige. Paige doesn't get more gun damage. Poor Paige. To compensate for this, though, they have reduced the headshot multiplier from 1.8x down to 1.65x, so you're less rewarded for hitting crits. Still very helpful, but not as helpful as it was before. They've also done some pretty big changes to how investment works in the shop. So let's take a look at these new bonuses. They've basically added spikes, where at a certain point you get a huge amount of extra investment. So for weapon investment bonuses, you now get an additional 20% weapon damage at 4,800 souls spent. So if you reach 4.8k, for example buying Tesla Bullets and Swift Striker, you get a massive damage increase. Look at that. And then the same is true for Vitality and Spirit. If you invest 4.8k into Vitality, you get 12% bonus health. So if I buy Fortitude and Enchanter's Emblem, boom, I just got a massive spike in my health. And for Spirit, you now get 20 additional Spirit power at 4,800 souls spent. So Quicksilver Reload and Surge of Power, boom. And I just got a massive Spirit spike. So this is really going to encourage build makers to hit all three of these spikes in their builds and kind of diversify their item purchases by speccing into multiple categories instead of going super hard into just one or two categories, because you'll be able to get really, really powerful for hitting these thresholds. It's a very interesting decision, and we'll see how it affects build crafting in the future. Alright, let's talk about the worst change of the update now. They've gone and done it. We need to riot now. Wall jumps cost a quarter of stamina. Yeah, that's really stupid. Why are we doing this? Why are we limiting fun? This is not fun, Valve. This is lame. Let me wall jump for free, please. Like, the wall's right there. Just let me do it. And the subsequent ones still cost half a stamina. This is so not cool. And on top of that, just global stamina regen rate has been reduced by 5%, so everyone's stamina regens slower now. This is really lame. I don't know why they're doing this. This sucks. I hate it, and I'm going to be very critical of this decision because I don't think it's the right direction to take the game in, and this really is a movement nerf that I don't think needed to happen. We've got a couple more movement nerfs. First of all, jump pads. The stun window has been increased from 0.6 seconds to 0.9 seconds. So you can be almost a full second off the jump pad and still get stunned if an enemy damages you, which is kinda rough. Kinda rough for movement enjoyers like myself. They have also done another change. So if you melee somebody who's mantling, which is the process of getting on top of a building just like this, if you melee them, then they will be slowed. And if they are affected by that mantle slow, they are no longer allowed to mantle slide like this. So their movement and momentum is just going to be a little bit slower. And it's going to be easier to kind of chase someone who's like mantling away like this if you do successfully melee them. Alright, let's go back to exploring the map again to talk about the changes that they've made to objectives. Specifically, walkers have gotten a lot of changes here. But real quick, 2 changes. After 35 minutes, all troopers will gain 50% HP, making them much tougher to kill in the ultra late stages of the game, which honestly is fair enough. And it should help those trooper snowballs to actually help round out the game a little bit faster if you get a bunch of troopers in your base and end the game quicker, which I like. Guardian HP, globally, has also been increased from 3,500 to 4,250 HP, so that's a pretty significant increase, and Guardians won't be made of as much paper now. They've added a few extra sheets to their paper-thin health bar. But where things really get interesting is when we take a look at the walkers. First of all, look at how chunky this health bar is. That's because they've done 2 things that really impact walkers. First of all, walker HP has been increased by 40% just across the board. On top of that, walkers on the side lanes now have the same HP as the mid-walker. If you didn't know, the mid-walker was about 37% tankier than the side lane walkers. The side lane walkers had 37% less HP. So these are chunky boys now. It's going to take a very big effort to take these walkers down. And split pushing, I think, probably just got a lot less viable, because if you're playing someone like McGinnis or Wraith, someone who's really good at taking down objectives, you're still going to do a lot of damage, but it's going to take you several seconds longer to destroy them. So this is a very big change. And they've also changed a bunch of things regarding walker engagement. So they've changed the ranges for attacks, stomps, etc. And I believe that's what these rings on the ground are meant to indicate, how close you need to be to the walker for it to start actually doing some things. So let's go over and investigate that by taking a look at the enemy walker. Alright, so here's the walker, and if I just stand right here, the walker is dormant. Ooh, but if I get basically right on the line, it's going to start sizzling me, and once it's actually woken up, I'm still going to take damage all the way back here. Now, if I get inside this ring, let's see what happens. Is it going to start doing the throwing fireball attack? Oh, it's going to slam me right there, but you can see the slam radius has actually been significantly reduced to basically this little circle right here, so that's very interesting. It hasn't done the throw fireball attack, though. I'm kind of curious as to why it hasn't done that, but regardless, the range of engagement for the walker is now very different, and that stomp in particular, that's been nerfed pretty hard in terms of the range. But let's take a look at some of the other number changes they've done. So the stomp cooldown has been reduced from 10 seconds to 6 seconds. It'll do it a lot more frequently. So the stomp is really meant to be something that punishes you for being up close. It's going to stomp a lot more frequently, but you can get away from it a lot easier. So I guess it's meant to kind of punish people for punching the walker consistently like this? I don't know. On top of that, the stomp damage has been increased from 350 plus 10% max HP to 350 plus 15% max HP. And they've also buffed the fireballs too. So the fireball radius has been increased from 5 meters to 6 meters. The debuff now lingers for 4 seconds. And they now reduce your bullet and spirit resistance by 10%. So very punishing to get hit by one of those fireballs. The blue lane walker play area has also been adjusted. And as you can see here, there's a lot more room. Oh my gosh. And you actually can't go inside here. The door has been closed. Let's take a look at the boxes too. Yeah, we can kind of come in here. There is still a hallway back here, which you can explore. There's still a lot of boxes back here. But yeah, this has been really shoved back. There's a lot more of an open area here for you to attack and defend from. This platform has been kind of skinnied up a little bit. This is really going to change how fights are played around the blue walker. The rest of the geometry looks to be basically the same, but yeah, that is a pretty big change right there. Another very big change is that guardians and walkers will now start with 75% damage resist that decays to minus 50% over the first. In Guardian's case, it's 10 minutes of a match. In the Walker's case, it's 20 minutes of a match. So for the first couple of minutes here, oh my gosh, shooting the Guardian is going to do basically nothing. That's actually kind of crazy. But the longer the game goes on, the Guardians will actually become more vulnerable to damage. So at 10 minutes in a match, you had better be taking those Guardians down quick. They're at minus 50% resistances. It's still going to be difficult to deal damage to the Walkers at that time, but around 20 minutes, every Walker should be a lot easier to take down. Minus 50% resistances is huge, and that's going to make up for the fact that they have these drastically increased health pools. So they are really trying to affect the pacing of the game to try and make things, honestly, it seems a little bit more rigid in the sense that you are never going to be taking a Walker before 10 minutes, and you're going to have a really difficult time taking a Guardian in the first, like, 4 minutes of a match. And so we'll see how that affects the overall feel of the game. We'll see if it makes games feel too repetitive or not. We'll see how it affects the time it takes to play through games now. A lot of really big changes here. I still don't get why Yoshi calls these minor patches. The changes just keep coming, though, because, well, flex slots have gotten a very major update. You actually start the game now with 9 slots open instead of 8, which is very interesting. And the flex slots now are given on a per walker basis. So each walker is now responsible for 1 flex slot. You want to defend your walkers very, very diligently. Previously, you would get a flex slot for killing all the guardians, a flex slot for killing 1 walker, a flex slot for killing all the walkers, and then a flex slot for base guardians. Base guardians and regular guardians no longer give any flex slots, so they are merely an impediment towards getting into the enemy base or getting up to the walkers. Alright, now let's talk about one of the best changes. The Rejuv has been nerfed. Hallelujah! Oh my goodness. So, yeah, they have done a couple of things to the mid-boss here. First of all, as I kill the mid-boss, notice what happens. I get some permanent buffs here. Golden statue buffs. The team that lands the final blow on the Rejuv, everybody gets some golden statue buffs. However, to compensate, the Rejuv buff no longer grants the team that has it 10% max HP, 15% fire rate, and 15% spirit damage amp. So we're trading some very big temporary buffs for some smaller permanent buffs. And you still have the respawn in place mechanic, you still have 3 charges for the team, but not having those gigantic buffs in a team fight is, yeah, pretty big. Now, if we could just make it so that killing someone with a Rejuv buff actually grants souls and ticks up your kill counter, that would be great. Alright, we've also got some changes to ability points and the spirit urn. So first of all, if you drop or throw the urn, it now causes your parry to go on cooldown. So as you can see, I can't parry until the parry cooldown is over. That's a pretty big change. And also, is that visual indicator new? It might be. Very big indicator to let you know where the drop-off location is. That's going to be so helpful for newer players. That is really, really nice. I like that quality of life change. I'm pretty sure that's new. I swear I'm not the most ignorant and unattentive person in the entire game. Okay. Ow! Ah! I dropped the urn! But yeah, also, the Soul Urn will no longer grant 1 AP to the person dropping it off. It now provides 4 permanent buffs to the person dropping it off. So it's basically, dropping it off is now the same as successfully completing a Sinner's Sacrifice. And you can see all those buffs that I just got there. Pretty nice. So, What about those AP points then? How are we going to max out our abilities now? Well, they added 2 more levels at 47k and 49k souls to let you get all of your ability upgrades. So we are now, once again, if the game goes long enough, able to max out all of our abilities on every character on the team, which I think is really fun for late game matches that really go long. Having all your AP online is just, I think that's a really fun thing. The bridge buffs have also been changed. I'm going to go ahead and grab this survival buff to show you that, yeah, the regen has actually been changed. Instead of giving a percentage of your max HP as regen, it is now a flat regen. From 4 to 40 fixed regen, as opposed to 0.5 to 1.5% of your max HP. In some situations, this will maybe be more HP than you would have been getting previously, especially if you are a squishier character with less HP, like Mina. But, especially on tankier characters like Mo and Krill and Abrams, this will probably end up being a net nerf because they have really big health pools, and so they got a lot of healing from this survival buff. But we're not done. The gun buff got just straight up buffed. It gives more ammo now, up to a maximum of 70 instead of 60%, and the gun buff will now instantly reload your ammo on pickup, which is a nice quality of life change, similar to how the movement buff gives you your stamina back. The casting buff has also been buffed. It gives you actually a lot more spirit power. It used to max out at 40, now it maxes out at 65. And the cooldown reduction has been rescaled, though. It has been nerfed a little bit. It used to max out at 25%, now it maxes out at 20%. And the movement buff has also buffed up your stamina. Instead of giving 1 extra stamina at a minimum, it now gives 2 extra stamina at a minimum. So, yeah, a bit more impactful in the early game. I can't believe Yoshi said this was a small balance update. Those were his literal words. We're only just now getting to the item changes and hero changes, and there's a ton of those too. So first of all, items. They have made some sweeping changes to the cooldown reduction items, and most of these appear to be nerfs. Enchanter's Emblem from 7 down to 5. Compress cooldown from 22 down to 18. Superior cooldown from 25 down to 20. Transcendent cooldown from 30 down to 25. Spell Slinger, that's even catching strays here, from 12 down to 6. Spiritual Overflow from 20 down to 12, that's a huge nerf. Echo Shard no longer grants cooldown reduction at all. Scourge, I didn't even realize that gave cooldown reduction, from 6 down to 4. And Golden Statue buffs have also gone down by a pretty substantial margin, about a third of their total effectiveness. So this is going to impact so many different characters and so many different builds, and especially characters that are super dependent on cooldowns like Pocket. They just got hit with a pretty massive nerf this update as a result. Alright, let's talk about the item changes for each category now. I'm going to put all of the gun changes up here on the screen. You can read through all of them. I'm going to cover the highlights. So it looks like a lot of items are also getting cooldown nerfs. For example, Headshot Booster is getting 1 second added to its cooldown. Split Shot also got a ginormous cooldown nerf, from 14 seconds up to 32 seconds. Holy crap, this item might be a little dead now. I don't know. That's a major change. Mystic Shot has also received a nerf, not to the cooldown, but to the base damage, going from 45 down to 40. However, the spirit scaling has been slightly improved, so it'll scale better into the late game. Blood Tribute is getting a bit of a nerf to the debuff resist from 50 down to 40. I've actually been seeing a lot more of this item recently, so I'm not actually all that surprised by this change, and it's still a very powerful amount of debuff resist. Cultist Sacrifice is getting a very big change. It now grants weapon damage instead of fire rate. And while you might think, well, what's the big deal? It's still buffing your weapon. This actually is going to end up being a nerf for a lot of characters. You see, certain characters like Haze, Infernus, etc., they could really benefit from buying Cultist Sacrifice because it would help them build up their stacks faster. For example, Haze would build fixation stacks faster, but now, well, without that fire rate buff, yeah, she's not building them any faster, and also she doesn't really scale that well with weapon damage anyways, so Cultist just got a lot worse on Haze, and it's going to be worse on a lot of other characters, but it is also going to be still pretty solid for some characters, especially characters who scale a lot of weapon damage, who like having big impact on their guns. For example, it might actually be pretty decent on Pocket here, because Pocket actually hits pretty hard with their gun, and so we'll get extra player damage from that, and that'll translate into us hitting harder here. Although, it'll be a little bit more punishing if you miss your shots because you don't get fire rate anymore. Express Shot is getting even more changes to try and make it less of an early game juggernaut for Viscous in particular, and I guess a couple of other heroes too. So first of all, they have actually reduced the damage. The main weapon damage has gone from 185 down to 170, and the secondary fire has been reduced drastically from 75 down to 45. However, as I'm sure you've already noticed, it now scales with boons, and they also increase the ammo consumed a little bit. So if I buy this and then I max out my boons, we are now getting a grand total of 240% weapon damage at max boons and 80% secondary fire weapon damage. So it'll scale better in the late game than it did previously, but it won't have as much early game impact, which Express Shot definitely had a lot of early game impact on someone like Viscous, and so this is trying to clamp down on that power. Similarly, Tesla Bullets now does less early base damage, but more damage as you ramp it up. The spirit scaling has been improved, but the base damage is now 33. And before you think about rushing Capacitor, Capacitor has also received basically identical changes to Tesla Bullets, making it have more late game impact, less early game impact. And it no longer dispels buffs either, which is quite interesting. It deals damage, applies a strong slow that recovers over time, prevents stamina usage, and silences movement-based items and abilities for 4 seconds. So it's now much more of a slowing item, as opposed to a buff-removing item. So if I go ahead and use it on this guy, yeah, he's pretty slow, and he is also crippled from using his movement abilities for 4 seconds, which is pretty big. It's basically now just a more fancy and expensive slowing hex. Lucky Shot and Glass Cannon are also both catching strays here. Glass Cannon has a much beefier max health penalty at 13% as opposed to 10%, and Lucky Shot also does a little bit less damage, from 125 down to, now it says 110 in the patch notes, but it says 120 in games, so yeah, still, regardless, it's been nerfed. Crippling Headshot, though, has actually been buffed. It now has 5% extra healing reduction. Very powerful item. And Spiritual Overflow, we mentioned earlier, has less cooldown reduction, but they did give it more fire rate, making it more impactful of a gun item, which makes sense, because it's in the weapon category. And similarly, Spellslinger lost some cooldown reduction, but gained a little bit more fire rate, 12% per stack now, as opposed to 10%. Thankfully, there are much fewer Vitality item changes, as you can see, so let's quickly discuss these. First of all, Reactive Barrier getting massively nerfed, which sucks because I love using this item because I hate being crowd controlled. The cooldown has been massively increased from 26 seconds to 40 seconds, and the duration has been reduced from 12 seconds to 10 seconds. In my experience, though, the duration was never really a factor on this item, but a lot fewer barriers with this item. The barrier will still be just as impactful as it was previously, though. Spirit Shielding also getting some changes, and Weapon Shielding too. Spirit Shielding's cooldown has been increased from 35 to 45 seconds, and the damage threshold has been increased from 175 up to 225. Weapon Shielding now actually has the significantly lower damage threshold, so maybe we'll see more people picking this up. I don't know. And the duration has also been reduced. Again, I don't think that was much of a factor. Majestic Leap also got a 2-second cooldown nerf. Nothing is safe this update. Cheat Death got a pretty big buff in theme with the item. When you proc this item now, it will remove all non-stun debuffs, so any damage over time, anti-heal, fire rate, slow, etc. And so it'll help you get away much easier, especially if they have stuff like movement slow on you. That can be particularly deadly, and yeah, it should be easier to use this item, but it's still a hard sell for me, and honestly, I'm still not entirely convinced it should be in the game. Inhibitor got a big anti-heal buff too, from 35 up to 40. I still think this is a weird item to build around, though, because it doesn't upgrade from anything, even though I think it would make a lot of sense if it upgraded from Healbane, and possibly even slowing bullets. It could be a sort of 2-item upgrade similar to Leech. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section. But hold on, though, oh my gosh, we got a cooldown buff! Spellbreaker has gone from 10 seconds to 9 seconds. Wow! That's actually super rare this update. They are really trying to clamp down hard on spirit builds. Alright, let's talk about the spirit items now. Again, here's the full list, and you can pause the video if you want to read all of them. I'm going to be hitting just the highlights. So, Spirit Sap got a pretty interesting change this update. The cooldown has been buffed from 35 seconds down to 25 seconds. It now matches Focus Lens. Why does it match Focus Lens? because Spirit Sap upgrades into Focus Lens. What? That's insane. Let's talk about what Focus Lens does now. So it now builds from Spirit Sap, and it now reduces spirit resistance by 12% and reduces enemy spirit power by 30 for 12 seconds. The fire rate, however, has been nerfed from 16 down to 13, but it still allows you to target an enemy to silence them, and then a portion of all the damage dealt to them will get applied when the silence wears off. The silence still has a 4.25 second duration, but the resist reduction will still last for 12 seconds. So you have two different damage components to this item now. Very, very interesting, and it also makes this item a lot more valuable for spirit builds. Spirit builds, I mean, they could buy it, but they weren't picking this up as much as gun builds because, well, gun builds would benefit from the fire rate, and it was just easier to use. But now that Spirit Shred is actually kind of a big deal, I wonder if we'll see some people pick that up in this new patch. So what'd they do to Silence Wave? Well, Silence Wave no longer upgrades from Spirit Sap, and it no longer reduces spirit resistance or spirit power, but it now does damage. What? It does 100 impact damage, and it has 0.3 spirit power growth. So that's a thing. That is really weird. I don't know how to feel about this yet. They really just took away one easily accessible form of Spirit Shred and put it on a much more expensive item. So this is really going to impact a lot of builds. I have no idea what the implications are going to be for this at this time. But man, the Spirit category is getting some very big shakeups. And we're not even done yet. Let's take a look at Curse. Curse now removes all non-ultimate buffs. This now has the Capacitor effect. But it's arguably way easier to use than Capacitor because you don't have to aim it. And yeah, they will no longer have buffs on top of the already extremely detrimental effect of interrupting, silencing, disarming, and preventing item usage. Now granted, you can't cast it on an ulting Yamato and curse her then. There are still some limitations, but if you cast this on the right target, oh my goodness, it's going to be disgusting. I'm not looking forward to playing Viscous and getting cursed and having my cube removed. Oh man. To compensate though, they've nerfed the cooldown by 10 seconds, and they have reduced the weapon damage from 20 down to 15. Echo Shard now grants 5% ability range instead of cooldown reduction, as we mentioned earlier, and Scourge also does a little bit more damage now, from 3.25 up to 3.5%, again, because the cooldown reduction got nerfed. And also, they have buffed the cooldown from 38 to 35, so another rare cooldown buff in a sea of cooldown nerfs. To be honest, as a Curse enjoyer, I really like the change they've done to Curse. We're still going to have to see how the Focus Lens and Silence Wave stuff shakes out, but I actually kind of like the Spirit changes this time around. Alright, so now let's move on to the hero changes. And up first, we have actually a couple of buffs for Abrams. So the Shoulder Charge now has a 4-second shorter cooldown. They have taken 4 seconds out of the Tier 3 and put it into the base cooldown. So on lane and at all stages in the game now, you are going to have a faster Shoulder Charge. And on top of that, you now have 1 second of increased duration on the ultimate, which gives you more time to find the right target and time your slam to perfection. Bebop is getting a bunch of nerfs. His health growth per Boon has been reduced from 54 to 46, so at max level now, he only has 2400 HP. That actually feels a little low for a hitbox of this size. And we're not done yet. We actually have a lot of other changes too. Exploding Uppercuts cooldown has been increased from 19 to 22 seconds, but they have also buffed the Spirit scaling from 0.49 to 0.6. Sticky Bomb Tier 3 has also been changed from on attach, reduce their outgoing damage by 30% for 5 seconds, to on cast, you now move 5 meters per second faster for 3 seconds. Run away! Wait, that actually seems kind of fun. I mean, sure, they'll be doing a lot more damage to you, but it kind of fits the run in, place a bomb on them, and then run away sort of playstyle, which is really funny. However, it's not without some nerfs to the Hyper Beam too. The DPS has been reduced from 190 down to 160, but you do get some of that back on the Tier 2, from plus 90 up to plus 120. But bear in mind, they then did a sweeping 10% damage nerf to all ability point upgrades. So instead of doing 120 extra damage, it now only does 108 damage per second with the tier 2 here. So, at the end of the day, you are still doing less damage with the Hyper Beam at all stages in the match. Billy got some buffs to the Rising Ram. On the tier 2, you now get plus 35% weapon damage for 5 seconds, up from 25, and the tier 3 also makes you do 6.5% of their max health instead of 6%, and neither of those are actually affected by the sweeping ability point nerfs, because they aren't direct added damage, but rather buffs and special effects that the Rising Ram provides, so it kind of escaped any of those global nerfs. Calico is getting some interesting changes, a couple of nerfs and a couple of buffs. First of all, Gun Calico might be making a return, as her clip size has increased from 10 to 12. They slightly increased the reload time, but this is a lot more ammo to work with. Very interesting. Bloom Bombs had their cooldown increase from 12 to 14 seconds. Okay, fair enough. And the Return to Shadows also got a couple of changes. So the tier 3 damage amp has been reduced from 24 to 18%, but the duration has been increased from 5 seconds to 6 seconds, so less damage, but you get to use it for longer. Very interesting changes here. I kind of expected more nerfs for this character than she got. I don't know. We'll see how she shakes out. Doorman is getting some interesting changes. First of all, his regen has been nerfed from 2 to 1, but the very interesting change is regarding his bullet fall-off. So the fall-off in effectiveness now uses the actual distance traveled of the projectile rather than the distance between the start position and the end position. Effectively, what this means is that if you shoot somebody through the portal, I don't know if I can line it up here exactly. Where did my guy go? Wait, I placed the door on top of the guy. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So if I shoot through the door, the fall off will now be correct because it's based on the projectile and not the distance. So you see that I'm doing different damage when I shoot through the portal versus shooting him directly, even though, you know, it's the same distance away from me, so theoretically I would be doing the same damage last patch, but this patch, shooting through the portal is a lower amount of damage, and so it should just make it more intuitive at the end of the day. I don't think this is really a buff or a nerf, just it feels better. But I tell you what are some nerfs, though, the changes they've done to the call bell. So the explosion damage has been reduced from 60 down to 50, and the tier 2 explosion damage has been directly nerfed from 50 down to 45, and then indirectly nerfed by the sweeping changes. So we're now looking at 40 explosion damage on the tier 2. Yeah, that's a pretty big nerf. But they did improve the spirit scaling pretty hard from 0.7 to 0.1, so if you stack up a lot of spirit power, it'll start doing pretty big damage again. Drifter is getting a couple of buffs. They're probably being careful with him because of the global changes that they've made, and so the only thing they've done to Drifter is they've reduced the cooldown of Rend from 15 down to 13 seconds, and they increase his base regen on lane from 2.5 to 3.5. Dynamo mains are eating real good this patch, especially if you like impregnating people. So, his base regen is increased from 2 to 2.5, but the real big changes are to the kinetic pulse. The range has increased from 15 to 20 meters. This is the default range of the kinetic pulse now. That's pretty spicy. And they also reduced the cooldown by a whopping 4 seconds, from 26 down to 22. So this is probably to counteract the fact that the cooldown items got nerfed, and yeah, it means that your stomps are still going to be stomping a lot more frequently now, and that range makes it so much more reliable, especially on lane. Uh-oh, more Holliday Nerfs. Oh gosh, she just keeps getting nerfed, and well, like 7, it seemed to not really matter until eventually it'll probably catch up to her. So her base regen has gone from 2 down to 1, and her bullet damage growth and bullet damage have both been reduced. They also reduced the bounce pad damage from 80 down to 60, and Holliday is also going to be hit pretty hard by the global damage nerfs to AP because, well, both of these actually have a lot of their damage coming from ability points, especially the powder keg here on the tier 2. So, yeah, just even more damage nerfs for Holliday. And they also fixed a bug where you could get extra speed and distance with the dash jump and bounce pad timing. I don't actually know how to do that, but I have seen the tech before, and it is pretty powerful. So, you can't do that anymore. More movement nerfs, yay. Infernus now builds Afterburn even slower on body shots by about 10%, and he also had his Napalm tier 3 damage amp reduced from 20 down to 17. So instead of a clean 40 at tier 3, you now have 37% damage amp. Still powerful, but man, that number is ugly. Ivy is getting some interesting changes. The Kudzu's damage has been reduced from 50 down to 40, but they improved the spirit scaling from 0.56 to 0.65. They also buffed the cooldown of the stone form by a whopping 5 seconds, which is pretty cool. And they also improved the Watcher's Covenant lifesteal from 10 to 15. They also buffed the cast range of the airdrop, making it easier to pick up teammates. And if that teammate happens to be doing something silly, like using Seven's ult or Bebop's ult or anything like that, the damage penalty has been drastically reduced. It used to be 50%, now it's only a 30% damage penalty. So overall, Ivy's actually getting buffed this patch, which is kind of crazy, actually. Kelvin Nerfs, Kelvin Nerfs, Kelvin Nerfs, huzzah! Wow, his bullet velocity is way slower this patch, from 254 to 160. I don't know why I said it like that, but the point is, yeah, it's actually a lot harder to hit things consistently with the snowball launcher now, especially at a distance, because these projectiles are really slow. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think these are now the slowest projectiles in the game for a primary fire, barring Paige, of course. Obviously, she's the slowest, so yeah, gonna take more skill to hit these. Also, the Frost Grenade's base damage has gone from 74 down to 60. Big nerf there. Especially because, again, the Tier 3 got nerfed with the sweeping global changes. His Frozen Shelter has also been changed, and hallelujah, the cooldown has finally been nerfed. So the Tier 2 no longer provides 45 seconds of cooldown reduction. You get no cooldown reduction on this at all. Instead, Tier 2 provides 1 second of extra duration, but even that's not for free, because the base duration of Frozen Shelter has been reduced from 5.5 seconds to 5 seconds. So in reality, this duration increase is only half a second above what it was previously. So yeah, very big nerfs to Kelvin here, and you're going to have to be a lot more careful with your Frozen Shelters because the cooldown is way longer now. Lash Buffs! Finally! Yes! Oh my gosh. Oh, let's take a look at these sweet, beautiful buffs. I'm still salty about the stamina on the wall jumps, mind you, but hopefully this will make up for it. Let's see. The grapple cooldown has been reduced by a whole 7 seconds. A lot more use out of this ability now. That is awesome. Flog heal versus heroes has increased from 50 to 60%. More healing on lane is amazing, and it also does more damage now, from 60 up to 65. And the cooldown has also been reduced at base from 26 to 24 seconds. With the Tier 2 upgrade, though, it is exactly the same as it was last patch, because the Tier 2 has been nerfed slightly. Death Slam also got 10 seconds shaved off of the cooldown. Hooray! And if he didn't get this, I would be absolutely pissed, because Lash is another one of those characters who likes using superior cooldown, and that got nerfed. So the cooldown changes probably aren't as big, with the exception, of course, of the grapple change, but you know, I'll take a little bit of extra healing and damage on the Flog, thank you. Lady Geist got 1 change, but it's actually probably a big change for ult maxing Geist enjoyers, because the Tier 3 just got 10 extra meters to the radius. You now silence enemies within 25 meters for 3 seconds. That is actually a really big range, and it only gets bigger if you get something like Greater Expansion. I mean, look at how big this radius is now. That's actually kind of huge. So I wonder if there'll be a place where we see range maxing, ult maxing Geist in the meta. Interesting. Mina got some big nerfs, especially pertaining to her mobility. So the Sanguine Retreat cooldown has been increased by just 2 seconds. Okay, not so crazy so far, until you realize that it no longer resets your air jump and dash limits. So if I go ahead and just expend my dash jumps here and then use my Sanguine Retreat, no matter how hard I try, I can't dash or double jump again until I hit the ground. So that actually really limits her mobility in the air, because previously you could double jump and then Sanguine Retreat and then double jump and dash and then Sanguine Retreat again and then jump and then dash, blah, blah, blah. And it was wicked fun, and yeah, it kind of sucks that it's gone. I wonder if there would be room for them to maybe put it on the Tier 3 version of Sanguine Retreat or something like that, because it was really, really cool to do. But yeah, this means Mina is going to be a lot easier to catch up to now. She's not going to be so nimble. This is a very big nerf. And they also nerfed the cooldown of Love Bites from 7 seconds to 8 seconds, but they did buff the Tier 3 to now reduce the stamina by 2, which, I mean, that's actually kind of big, so I don't know if we'll see more people pick that upgrade up, but yeah. Ouch. Very big nerf to Sanguine Retreat. McGinnis is getting buffs, which is interesting, because last I checked, her win rate is pretty high in casual public matches. But yeah, her mini turret's health per boon has been increased from 10 up to 13. So if you max level now, yeah, you get 358 turret health now, and that is also significantly improved when you upgrade too. So yeah, that is pretty big now, actually. Wow. And also her spectral wall is 10% faster now, which will probably mess with some super fast wall placements like that, but it does mean that you'll be able to put the wall behind the enemies a lot faster now, and that'll be a lot more consistent. So yeah, McGinnis should feel better to play this update, and Turret McGinnis is probably about to go crazy. Mina got nerfed, but oh boy, her doppelganger Mirage got buffed this update really, really hard. So, first of all, I guess the less exciting buff, Fire Scarabs now steal more health from 37 up to 45. Okay, pretty cool. But the big change is to Traveler. So Traveler's base cooldown got reduced from 160 seconds to 145 seconds, and the tier 1 upgrade also reduces it by a further 25 seconds. So now we have a 2-minute cooldown on Traveler. But here's where it gets super exciting. I'm just gonna show you.
Where do you need me to go?
Yeah! You can teleport to objectives now. Friendly objectives in particular. You can't target enemy objectives, so I can't go to the enemy walker. But if you want to teleport over to your friendly guardian or your walker, even if no one on your team is nearby, you can do that now. Which gives Mirage so much value now for defending in situations where your team isn't able to get over to a walker in time. This is a very, very big change, and Traveler just got a lot more powerful this update, so you're gonna see a lot more Mirage this patch, that's for sure. So Mo and Krill might be killable on lane now. Their regen has been reduced from 3 down to 1, tying Mo and Krill with 7 for the worst regen in the game. Oh my goodness. He still has Scorn though, so I mean, that's pretty powerful, but yeah, a lot less regen. Big Mo and Krill nerf. Alright, let's take a look at Paige. She is getting a lot of changes. She has been a nuisance to fight against recently because with a Paige on your team, it's pretty hard to die. So let's see what they've done to her. First of all, her bullet damage growth has been reduced from 0.66 down to 0.52, and her barrier has also been nerfed pretty hard, in the early game especially, from 200 down to 150 barrier, and it only lasts 5 seconds now instead of 7 seconds. So definitely much less oppressive on the lane. The upgrades have also been changed. So the tier 1, instead of giving plus 50 barrier, now grants 16% fire rate. And this fire rate will scale with spirit power. So yeah, you can increase that pretty high up into the late game. The tier 2 has also been changed. Instead of giving 25% fire rate, it now grants 100 extra barrier and 2 seconds of duration. So you get the duration back and you get a more powerful barrier buff, but only later on in the match when it actually makes sense to have that much barriers. So this is exactly what I was hoping they would do, in the sense that they made the barrier weaker on lane, but a little bit stronger in the late game, so she still feels impactful as a support. Just like Holliday, Paradox is also getting a bunch of nerfs. Her base regen, bullet damage growth per boon, and base health as well as health per boon have all been reduced. She's just worse now. Less health, less weapon damage, less regen. Her pulse grenade has also been reduced. It now does 35 damage instead of 40, but the spirit scaling has increased from 0.43 to 0.55, so less early impact, but hopefully more damage later in the game if you scale spirit. And they also fixed a bug where you could air dash further than expected with kinetic carbine, which that actually seemed kind of interesting. I didn't know that was a thing, but yeah, that does sound pretty powerful, so glad they fixed it. Pocket has also been nerfed. Their base HP regen has also gone from 2 down to 1. A lot of characters joining 7 in the bucket of having no health regen on lane. Pocket's flying cloak damage at the start has also been reduced from 85 down to 70, but the tier 2 has been improved from 75 up to 85, except with the global AP damage reductions, it actually maths out to being 76 whole damage. So yeah, Pocket is much less bursty this patch. Pocket got nerfed really, really hard this update. Majestic Leap has a longer cooldown. All the cooldown items got nerfed. Man, and just as I was getting into Pocket 2, this really sucks. It seems like Valve really wants people to start playing Ball 7, because this is the second patch in a row that they've buffed it. The radius of the lightning ball at base has been increased from 3.5 to 4.25 meters. Yeah, big balls. And also, if you upgrade this, you still get the additional 1 meter of radius, and so yeah, he can have some really, really big balls now. You get some greater expansion on that too, and my gosh, you actually have a pretty big area denial tool now. So That's pretty interesting. And they also improved his crit reduction from 25% up to 35%, so a little bit less headshot damage. Shiv appears to also be getting some nerfs. The alt-fire knockback has been reduced by another 10%, and it also now costs 3 ammo instead of just 2. But, as I'm sure you'll notice, yeah, the damage still is not triple the normal shotgun damage, so it's actually very inefficient to use this for damage now, I would say. So yeah, that's a very, very big nerf, especially also when you consider the express shot changes, as we mentioned earlier. Killing Blow's rage damage bonus has also been reduced from 17 down to 15%, and the tier 2 has been reduced from 8% to 6%. But the Killing Blow rage state now causes your alt-fire knockback to push you a little bit further, which is very interesting. So if I build up max rage real quick, and then use my alt-fire, we will go just a little bit farther. I'm not too familiar with the Shiv alt-fire tech, but I'm sure Shiv mains will be able to figure that out and see how valuable it is. And they also fixed some bugs with barriers and spirit damage scaling, because Shiv had some weird stuff going on where he was able to get more barrier than he was supposed to, if I recall correctly. So that should be fixed as well. Sinclair is getting a couple of very interesting changes. One that's especially going to drastically improve both the skill floor and skill ceiling of the character. So first of all, the bad news. His health has been reduced from 700 down to 650, and regen has been reduced from 3 down to 2. But Spectral Assistant. The total swaps for Spectral Assistant has been increased to 2. Ooh. Oh, that's going to be obnoxious to play against, isn't it? And it does have an internal cooldown, as you can see, of about 2 seconds. But yeah, you're able to teleport twice now. The tomfoolery that Sinclair mains are about to get up to. Oh my gosh. And also, they have reduced the cooldown of audience participation from 50 down to 40. So, you know, you can ult people even more now. Oh, man. They keep nerfing my Viscous, man. Oh, my gosh. And you wonder why I barely play this guy anymore. So the splatter cooldown has been increased from 21 seconds to 30 seconds. Because, you know, that's reasonable. And they also changed around the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 upgrades. So the previous Tier 1 upgrade would give you minus 6 seconds of cooldown. That's been changed to give you 36 damage and 1 meter of radius. And the Tier 2 used to give you 45 damage and 1 meter of radius, but that has been changed to 12 seconds of cooldown reduction. So if I upgrade to the Tier 2, we now have an 18-second cooldown, whereas previously we would have had a 15-second cooldown. So yeah, big nerf to the splatter just across the board. However, if you choose to upgrade to the Tier 3, you now, in addition to the bounces, also get improved spirit scaling. It improves the spirit scaling by 0.4. So now we have 2.2 spirit scaling on splatter, which actually is pretty high. So I wonder if there will be a world in which we max out the splatter to get that extra spirit scaling online. But yeah, pretty big nerfs overall to the splatter, especially for the early lane. Cube has also been nerfed, so the duration has been reduced from 4 seconds to 3 seconds. Less time in the Sanctuary of the Cube, but they did increase the regen from 30 to 40, and if you upgrade to the Tier 2, then you get that 1 second back. So actually, if you plan on upgrading to the Tier 2 anyways, this ends up being a slight buff to the amount of healing that you get. Vyper gets more health per boon. That's it. Alright, moving on. Warden is getting a couple of changes to sort of shift his power more towards his gun. His bullet damage and bullet damage growth have both been slightly increased, but his health regen has been reduced from 3 to 2, and Alchemical Flask's radius has been reduced by 1 meter, but if you upgrade to the Tier 2, you get that 1 meter back. So ultimately, once you get that upgrade online, Warden should be feeling a little teensy bit stronger this patch. Wraith is getting a couple of flat buffs. The Card Trick's base damage has been increased by 5, although bear in mind that the Tier 2, of course, has been decreased because of the global nerfs, as I've mentioned multiple times. And they also reduced the cooldown of Project Mind from 48 seconds to 42 seconds. So, yeah, that's pretty cool as well. And finally, the last change in Yoshi's behemoth list of his small balance patch. Yamato's base regen has been reduced from 2 to 1, the power slash low charge damage has been reduced from 40 to 30, the medium charge damage has been reduced from 60 to 50, the crimson slash cooldown has been increased from 11.5 seconds to 15 seconds, and the tier 3, well, it has actually been buffed. It gives you a lot of cooldown reduction back from 5.75 seconds cooldown down to 9 seconds of cooldown reduction. So, yeah, mostly Yamato nerfs, but if you do choose to max out the Crimson Slash, then I guess you're right back down to having a very low cooldown. So yeah, that was Yoshi's small balance patch. Oh my goodness, so many things have changed this update. The meta has certainly been shaken up. We're gonna need some new tier lists, we're gonna need some new builds, and by golly, we're also gonna need some new strategies because of all the changes they've made to the objectives and to troopers this update. So we're going to be playing a lot of Deadlock here on the channel. Make sure that you're subscribed because I'm going to be experimenting a lot with the new changes over the next couple of weeks. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these changes in the comment section down below. So yeah, leave a comment, and while you're there, make sure to like this video if you found it to be helpful. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.